to pull away late?
I feel like Connecticut, they stepped it up in the second half of not letting us get the easy bucket that we wasn't getting in the first half.
The Indiana Fever looked like a completely different team on Wednesday night, and not in a good way. Without the electric presence of Caitlin Clark, their floor general, and the emotional engine that's powered their surprising early season grit, Indiana stumbled their way through a demoralizing 83-77 loss to the Washington Mystics. Playing in the first of 4 games at Baltimore's CFG Bank Arena, the Mystics seized their opportunity, taking full advantage of an Indiana squad that looked confused, disconnected, and fatigued. For the first time in her professional career, Clark sat out, sidelined with a left quad strain that's expected to keep her benched for at least 2 more weeks. Her absence was like a black hole in the Fever's offense, and the void she left behind was impossible to fill. Without her elite vision, pinpoint passing, and innate ability to generate fast break momentum out of thin air, the Indiana Fever collapsed into a sluggish version of themselves. Their shooting percentage plummeted to a season-low 39.7%, and their three-point accuracy was abysmal, just 23.8%. Those numbers tell a deeper story, one of a team that thrives on tempo, flow, and rhythm, all of which start with Caitlin Clark at the top of the key. More glaringly, the Fever failed to score a single fast break point, not one. For a team that usually finds at least a few easy transition buckets per game thanks to Clark's quick reactions, this marked a significant shift. Indiana's ball movement stagnated, the spacing collapsed, and the pressure to manufacture points fell unevenly onto shoulders unprepared for that kind of load. The results were predictably messy. 16 turnovers and only 15 assists. Numbers that underline a total systemic breakdown without their centerpiece, Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston, usually the team's reliable anchors when Clark isn't cooking, combined for just 24 points. For Boston, in particular, the night was frustrating without Clark feeding her clean looks inside or stretching the floor with deep threats. The Mystics were able to double down in the paint, stifling Indiana's all-star forward with suffocating defense and physicality that the officials let slide for much of the game. And while Mitchell showed flashes of her explosive scoring ability, she looked overburdened, often dribbling into traffic or taking forced shots late in the shot clock. That left veteran forward DeWanna Bonner to do most of the heavy lifting off the bench. Bonner's 21 points were a welcome spark, but her output wasn't enough to turn the tide. Indiana lacked structure and fluidity, and without their offensive conductor, possessions too often ended in isolation attempts or desperate heaves. The Mystics, by contrast, looked liberated, led by the relentless Brittany Sykes, who dropped 21 points and added pressure on both ends of the court. Washington looked like a team reborn. Rookie Kiki Ariafun, one of the more promising young players in the league, contributed 16 points, showing off a polished postgame and veteran poise well beyond her years. This wasn't just about stats, it was about energy. Washington played fast, hungry, and connected, while Indiana played hesitant, disjointed, and reactive. The Mystics' backcourt pushed tempo every chance they got, exposing Indiana's lack of transition defense and making them pay repeatedly for poor rotations and late closeouts. They even looked energized by the Baltimore crowd, feeding off the new atmosphere like a home team protecting sacred ground. What was most concerning for Indiana wasn't just the loss, it was the psychological effect of playing without their star. This team, still young and gelling, seemed unsure of itself without Clark's presence on the floor. Her leadership, her swagger, her unshakable confidence, all were absent, and it showed. In the post-game press conference, Indiana Fever guards Sophie Cunningham and Kelsey Mitchell didn't hold back. Cunningham, known for her toughness and vocal leadership, described the loss as a gut punch, a phrase that resonated deeply with anyone watching. "We weren't ready," she said. "Not just to play without Caitlin, but to take responsibility for the little things she usually takes care of. Ball movement, spacing, tempo, those things are harder than people realize, and she makes them look easy." Mitchell echoed that sentiment, adding, "It's not just about points, it's about gravity. Defenses bend to Caitlin. Without her, we had to find new angles, new lanes, new ways to communicate, and we didn't do that tonight." Their words weren't excuses, they were admissions. Honest reflections from players who know they've built their identity around Clark's game. That dependency is now being tested, and it's raising hard questions for head coach Christy Sides and the Indiana coaching staff. How does this team win without Caitlin Clark? How do you adapt a system that's so clearly engineered around one generational player? The next 2 weeks will be a trial by fire for the Indiana Fever. As they attempt to stay afloat in a tightly contested WNBA season without their superstar, they'll need more from everyone. Mitchell has to become more efficient and aggressive as a ball handler. Boston needs to assert herself even without easy feeds, and players like Lexi Hull, Erica Wheeler, and Temi Fagbinal need to provide stability in the second unit. And yes, Bonner's bench production must continue. But even beyond the tactical adjustments, the Fever must rediscover their collective identity, because right now, it's hard to say what kind of team Indiana is without Caitlin Clark orchestrating the chaos. Are they a defense-first team, a half-court grinder, a post-heavy offense? Wednesday's game didn't provide any clarity. What it did provide was a sobering look at just how central Clark has become to the team's performance physically, emotionally, and psychologically. Off the court, Clark's impact remains unshaken. Her jersey still leads the league in sales, her name dominates headlines, and her absence was a trending topic within minutes of tip-off. WNBA viewership dipped noticeably without her presence, a stark reminder of her star power and how much attention she brings not just to the Indiana Fever, but to women's basketball as a whole. In some ways, her injury has become a referendum on the sport's dependence on individual stars to generate buzz and momentum. And Indiana, for all its growth this season, now finds itself in the eye of that storm. They are learning what life looks like without their brightest light. It's painful, it's disorienting, but it may also be the crucible that shapes their future. Clark's eventual return will be welcomed with open arms, but until then, this team must figure out who they are when the lights dim. Will they crumble under the pressure, or will they emerge more balanced, more resilient, and more unified? One thing is clear. Caitlin Clark is not just Indiana's best player, she's their identity, and without her, they are forced to find new voices, new rhythms, and perhaps, a new version of themselves. For now, the road ahead is uncertain. But if the Indiana Fever want to grow beyond being Caitlin Clark's team, this is their moment to prove it.
And she just draws so much attention. People have to guard her. And when she draws that, she opens up for everyone else, like Tosh, you know what I mean? So I think she's one of...
The Indiana Fever, reeling from their recent loss against the Washington Mystics, find themselves at a pivotal moment in their season, not just in the standings, but in the mirror. After falling 83-77 in Baltimore, the absence of Caitlin Clark continues to reverberate far beyond the stat sheet. Kelsey Mitchell and Sophie Cunningham both voiced the disappointment and frustration that accompanied the loss. Offering raw honesty that reveals more than a box score ever could, "We're going to come back tomorrow at practice with more focus, more energy," Cunningham said with conviction. Standing in the locker room, trying to make sense of the game's emotional toll, "We know where we want to be at the end of this season, but we're not just going to get there by hoping. We've got to work every day." That belief, though strong, was tested by a humbling reality check delivered on the court. Indiana, without Clark's leadership, vision, and offensive orchestration, looked fundamentally out of sync. It wasn't just about poor shooting or cold streaks, it was about the unraveling of an identity they had so quickly built around Clark's presence. Kelsey Mitchell echoed Cunningham's reflections with a dose of realism that couldn't be ignored. Early in the game, she admitted, "We weren't sharp enough to be a contender for anything tonight." Her words carried the weight of a leader trying to hold her teammates and herself accountable. "I think getting punched in the mouth early is humbling because it shows where we need to be." This wasn't bitterness. It was clarity. The Fever were exposed, not only by the Mystics' energy and execution, but by their own lack of cohesion in Clark's absence. The numbers only magnify what the eye test already confirmed. Without Clark on the floor, Indiana becomes a drastically different team. With Clark orchestrating the offense, the Fever average an impressive 107.5 points per 100 possessions, an elite number that puts them in the upper echelon of WNBA offenses. But without her, that efficiency plummeted to just 87.7 points per 100 possessions against Washington. That's not just a drop-off. That's a complete offensive collapse. The game moved slower. Decisions were delayed. And the natural flow that Clark provides, her ability to see the floor 2 steps ahead, draw defenders with her gravity, and unlock space for others was noticeably absent. The stats serve as a mirror, reflecting a harsh truth. Without their rookie superstar, Indiana's offensive engine stalls. And yet, even sidelined, Caitlin Clark wasn't absent in spirit. Far from it. despite being ruled out with a left quad strain that is expected to keep her out for at least 2 more weeks. Clark traveled with the team to Baltimore, a gesture that reveals her deep investment in the collective journey of this young Fever squad. She sat alongside the coaching staff, leaning into her basketball IQ to remain involved in strategic conversations. During timeouts, she was vocal. On the bench, she animatedly communicated with teammates, and before the game, she participated in warm-ups, not physically, but emotionally interacting with fans, signing autographs, and representing the face of the franchise with her usual spark and authenticity. Clark's presence, even off the court, continues to guide this team. She may not be driving the offense at the moment, but she's still steering the culture, reminding the Fever on the league why she's a transformational figure. That kind of leadership matters. It resonates, especially during adversity. For a team navigating growing pains, those intangible contributions are invaluable. Yet there's no escaping the fact that Indiana has become dependent on Clark's brilliance. The way she collapses defenses, the attention she commands 30 feet from the hoop, the way her passing elevates everyone around her, those aren't luxuries anymore. They're necessities. Her absence has created a spotlight on the system's fragility, revealing how much work is still needed to create a balanced roster that can compete on nights when Clark isn't available. That's the hard lesson the Fever are learning right now, and it's one that's come with a gut punch. Watching this game unfold, it was evident that without Clark, the other players were forced into roles they weren't yet comfortable with. Kelsey Mitchell had to take on more of the ball handling and playmaking duties, which limited her natural scoring flow. Aaliyah Boston, typically dominant in the paint, struggled to find her rhythm without Clark drawing defenders away and feeding her in optimal spots. Sophie Cunningham, an emotional leader, found herself trying to balance the demands of leadership and execution, something even veterans find challenging. The Mystics, on the other hand, smelled blood. They applied pressure early and never relented, capitalizing on Indiana's confusion and converting turnovers into easy points. The Fever's lack of fast break, scoring 0 points in transition underscores how deeply they miss Clark's ability to push tempo and create chaos in the open floor. Everything was harder. Every possession felt labored. Every basket required too much energy. And that's unsustainable in a league as fast and physical as the WNBA. Still, there's a silver lining, buried beneath the frustration. Growth doesn't happen in comfort. Championship culture isn't born during highlight reel wins, it's forged in ugly, gritty losses like this one, and the Fever are in that crucible right now. These next few weeks, without Clark, could end up being the most important stretch of their season, not because of wins or losses, but because of what it reveals about their resilience, their willingness to adapt, and their ability to lead without their star. Indiana's coaching staff, led by Christy Sides, has a massive challenge ahead. They must figure out how to recalibrate the offense around Mitchell, Boston, and Cunningham. They have to empower players like Erica Wheeler, Lexi Hull, and Christy Wallace to take on larger roles. They must develop a system that doesn't collapse when one player is missing. In other words, they must future-proof the Indiana Fever, because while Clark is unquestionably the engine of this franchise, no great team can rely on one player forever. They need depth, chemistry, and structure. They need to believe they can win without Clark, not because they want to, but because they have to. And if they learn that now, they'll be stronger when she returns. That belief is already starting to take shape in the locker room. Cunningham's promise to bring more focus and energy to the next practice isn't just lip service. It's a signal that this team isn't folding. Mitchell's candid assessment of their weaknesses isn't a complaint, it's accountability. These are signs of maturity, of players who are willing to face the music and grow from it. And that's what fans should hold on to. Because even as the Fever struggle without their star, they're building something deeper, an identity that can weather storms. Off the court, Clark remains the heartbeat of that process. Her sideline engagement, her strategic input, her visible support all speak to her character and leadership. She isn't just waiting for her quad to heal. She's still working, still leading, still showing up. And that sets the tone for the entire franchise. The Indiana Fever aren't where they want to be yet, but they're beginning to understand what it takes to get there. Every setback is a test. Every loss is a lesson. And right now, they're learning the most important one of all: how to fight without their brightest star.